a recording, I would have done my hair.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give folks a few more minutes to join before we get started. So we'll get started promptly at the 5-minute mark.
Hey, Esther, since I'm screen sharing and I can only see us two in the video and the presentation, is there capability for questions, or how does that work?
Yeah, there is a capability for questions.
Love that.
We know you're here to answer all the questions, William.
I answer some of the questions. I'll give all the hard ones to you.
Oh, great. I should have prepped some music as people are coming in.
I mean, if you want, I can sing, but I'm not too good.
It's all
kidding. Totally kidding.
Did you see the new Jennifer Lopez movie?
Not yet. Is it good? Don't ruin the surprise.
So good. It's so good. That was my Valentine's Day activity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went rock climbing yesterday.
There's a song, you'll really like it. I'm gonna send it your way.
I'm ready.
Welcome, everyone. As you're joining, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat and let us know your name, where you're calling in from, and what your chapter is.
I'm like trying to learn all the secrets of Zoom. Oh, there we go.
Maybe no one can send something in the chat. Uh-oh.
Oh, there's one.
Oh, no, there it is. A friend's calling from Corpus Christi, SHPE chapter. A friend's got a website. Look at you. Nice. A resume website, kind of. CV and a resume. That's awesome. Go you.
Chicago.
We have a junior member on the line from Plantation, Florida.
Oh, I'm from Florida, so we can relate. Region 7. Let's go.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Please keep your introductions coming through in the chat. We love when you all engage with one another, and we'd love to see where everyone is in the country. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Scholarship Webinar Series. We are so excited that our scholarship program launched on February 1st. This is our second webinar where we will share how to build an amazing resume. If you missed our first webinar, the ins and outs of our scholarship program, be sure to check it out on our scholarship page. The recording and the slides are posted online. Before we get started, some housekeeping. If you have any questions for us or SHPE, please feel free to send them through the chat box. We'll be answering questions at the end of the session if time permits. If we don't get to your question during today's webinar, don't worry, a script with all the questions and answers will be posted on our scholarship webpage after the webinar has concluded. as I mentioned, this slide deck will also be posted. And lastly, I'd like to encourage you to share today's webinar through your social networks, including Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter. We want to ensure that everyone has an opportunity to apply to our scholarship program and has the tools required to do so. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and introduce our guest speaker, William Gonzalez. William is a SHPE professional member who has been involved with SHPE for over 9 years, starting at the University of South Florida as a freshman in 2012. While at the University of South Florida, William was able to help grow the chapter from 35 members to over 120 members. After his presidency at USF, he began to volunteer with SHPE National by supporting the National Institute for Leadership Advancement, also known as NILA conference, creating new workshops for the national convention as well. His areas of focus for young professionals are professional development, financial acumen, and servant leadership skills. Today, William works for Microsoft Corporation as a customer success account manager, and he is also a scholarship alumni. So welcome, William. And
Thank you,
I'll
Esther.
let you take it away.
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction. Hey, everyone. And as Esther said, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will work with Esther to make sure they're all answered. Even if they're not in the video, we'll get them answered by the time we send that out. So today, I'm going to go ahead and start just chatting on building an amazing resume. I might actually be asking Esther for some thoughts since she runs the scholarship program. So before I even show any slides on a resume, just to chat, and I don't know exactly what's been covered. I see a resume as a tool. I don't see it as the only thing that's either going to get you a job or get you a scholarship or get you into university or do anything by itself. I only see it as a tool to really show who you are. So if there's any questions on that or where's the right place to make a resume or use a resume, feel free to ask. I see it as a living and breathing document that you don't have to be updating it every week, but every maybe 3 months, 4 months, it doesn't hurt to take some time and update it. And I still update mine even now as a professional. So here we go. So today you have me and Esther. If anyone is interested in connecting on LinkedIn, please feel free to reach out to me there. If you have any questions after, feel free to reach out to me there. I always answer them. If I don't get to you immediately, just I'm a little backed up. I'm gonna keep going. All right. So the goal of what we're gonna answer today is here on the slide. I'm gonna go ahead and not read all of this. I'm just gonna hit the high level points. So defining the purpose of what you're trying to do with your resume. How are you gonna build the resume? What are you thinking about when you're building this resume? Who's it gonna go to? Where can I use it? How do I frame it up and how do I answer / meet the requirements that are being asked of me with the resume? How do I use it appropriately? And what do I need to put on there is what I'm going to go ahead and cover today. And then the last point, I'm going to go ahead and highlight that one. Evaluating your resume, your final resume is going to be very important. And this is really something you could be doing with professionals like myself that volunteer with SHPE, with professionals at your college, university, at your high school, peers, because you can do proofreading. There's a lot of different ways to make sure you are getting your resume to where it needs to be. And you don't have to, I'm going to say, spend money to get your resume correct and in the right place. Esther, you have anything to comment on that, or should I just keep going?
I would say that's absolutely right. And don't spend money. I'm going to say that again. Don't spend money on building your resume, because actually the hardest work you can't pay somebody to do when it comes to your resume. It's just like sitting down and thinking through and taking time to think through what you've done. And I'll just add that when your scholarship applications are being reviewed, this is one component. Your essays are another component. Your transcript is another component. And your letter of recommendation is another. And you can think of it as a pie, and each of them are weighted pretty equally. So try to think about not reiterating things that are in the other components already.
I completely agree with everything you just said. So we'll keep going. And the reason I do bring up that paying before I keep going actually is I've seen students pay not 100, not 200, 300, 400, 500, $1,000 to get a resume done. And the information is out there, whether it be at an organization like SHPE or on the internet, YouTube, meeting with professionals. Again, it's out there. So please just spend your money somewhere else or invest it somewhere else. I'm going to go ahead and keep going. So define your purpose. And this is where I was talking about what is the resume for. I had named a few items that a resume can be used for, and very common in, I'm going to say the SHPE / young professional / student world of, hey, I need a resume to either apply for university / college, some sort of scholarship, maybe a job, whether it be at the movie theaters or whether it be for my first engineering internship. Maybe I want to do a research program at a university. Maybe I'm applying for a scholarship with SHPE or with another organization. There's so many different avenues that a resume can be used for. What do I want the reader to know about me? In what I think about when I read this is, what message do I want them to get from me? And I'm going to go ahead and just talk from my experience, and Esther, you can comment on this after. But for me, I studied industrial engineering. So I'm over here thinking, how can I show the reader on the other side of this that, hey, this is an industrial engineer, he has technical experience, he can solve problems, he can work with others, and he's going to become an asset to our team. So that's what I focus on. I have friends who are focusing on, hey, I'm a computer programmer, and I want to show that I'm extremely good at programming, solving complicated problems with those skills. I don't have those skills, so I focus in other areas. Do you have anything to add on to that before I go into the next bullet, Esther?
I don't know if it's in future slides, but a lot of students ask who views your resume. During the application period, our scholarship review committee are the ones that review your resume. And we have the review process, it's blind, so they don't actually see your name when they review your resume. And so you don't have to worry about somebody remembering that you're the one with the best resume or the worst resume. You want to just put your best foot forward in terms of submitting that entire application together. However, after scholarships recipients are selected, we are able to share the resumes of the recipients with the funders, some of the funders of our scholarship. So we can take a company like Intel, for example. They fund undergraduate and graduate students. They will never see your resume during the application or the review period. But if you're selected as a recipient, we then share your resume with them. So you want to kind of keep that in mind, that a potential employer may be reviewing and may be seeing the resume that you submit, even though they will not see it during the application period.
Now, just to comment on that, Esther, I have a question. Are the folks looking at resumes are they engineers, are they HR, are they SHPE volunteers? Who makes up the committee?
So I think that's an excellent question, and I'll answer that one and also a friend's question in the chat. So the review committee is made up of over 90 professional members, and they vary in education level. So some of our professional members have completed their bachelor's degree, some of them have completed master's and doctoral degrees. And so we actually match the reviewers to the applicants based on the level of education that the applicant is at. So if you are an undergraduate student, it's highly likely that the professional member reviewing your resume will be somebody who works in industry and completed an undergraduate degree in STEM, more specifically in engineering typically. For master's programs, we also try to find reviewers that have completed master's degrees. And so it becomes particularly important for people who are pursuing master's or doctoral programs that are research focused. We try to pick reviewers that are in that research arena. So if you are a PhD student, then I would recommend that you submit a CV style resume. And the reason is that your audience is an audience that is in academia, whereas undergraduate students and some master's students who are in terminal or professional degrees, their audience will be individuals in industry.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. So I am good on this slide. Anything you want to comment before we go?
No, I think we're good.
Awesome. So crafting your advertisement, what makes a good advertisement, and a well thought out goal. Highlights the best parts of product/service, clear and concise, tailored to the audience, captures their audience in a short span of time. So when I read all of this, I'm over here thinking, well, if I'm doing a resume, and I'm going to speak from my experience, I'm a young professional who studied industrial engineering, four-year degree, so I have just a bachelor's. My always rule of thumb was to keep it to one page and to keep it interesting. I didn't want anything to drag on too long. And I saw this later to become more important because the companies that I was talking to or being recruited by, or people who were looking over my resume, whether it be at a professional academic setting, they were only looking at the resume for what felt like 30 seconds at the first glance. And in reality, it was much shorter than that. They were first looking, hey, is it formatted well? Can I read it? Is it legible? Does this make sense from what I'm seeing? And then after they do that quick glance, they go into the details. And when you go into those details, I always used to use the strategy, and I still use it. Hey, I want my name across the top, big bold letters. I want to get straight to the point with the objective/summary and let them know what I'm looking for. At a time, if I was looking for a SHPE scholarship, for example, I would put in my objective that I was looking for a SHPE scholarship, and then also put in their comments on what I would be using the money for, or why I was looking for this. Same thing in a professional environment. I'm looking for an internship/full-time role. Here are the skill sets I have, and here's why I have an interest in that role. Then as a student, and I'm gonna speak from the student level, education was the next thing that I would always put. My major, the university I went to, GPA, and I'm gonna go ahead, and I don't remember which student had commented that they were community college. Even if you're at a community college, please put that the school you go to. And being here is already awesome that you're here. I think it was Brian, because you're going to be developing these professional skills when you do transition, if you transition over to a four-year university, that a lot of your peers aren't going to be, I'm going to say, working on. So you're going to be ahead of the curve in that sense. I have no issue, and I work for Microsoft. I used to work for a company called Rock Automation. I've never had an issue with someone at a community college. I'm always like, hey, what do you want to do? And it sparks a genuine conversation on what goals are, ambitions, and it's always a good talking point in my opinion. And then after that, experience is the next point that I usually put in there, and I break experience down into 3 different categories. You don't have to have them all. You can include 1, you can include 2, you can include 3. The professional experience / work experience, just to give you guys an idea, when I was in college, on my resume that landed me my first internship and helped me get scholarships, I had jobs on there like landscaping, painting, construction. There was nothing engineering about my resume. There was nothing in that sense of, oh my gosh, Microsoft has to hire this guy. He's going to be the best asset we've ever seen. But there was in there built in a lot of teamwork, critical thinking skills, and communication skills were built into my resume based off my experiences. And that's what my employers had seen as beneficial. In the leadership / volunteer area, I did a lot of engagement with SHPE, and I'm gonna speak openly here. I might get in trouble for saying this later, but I always used to recommend to students, hey, SHPE is the #1 organization at USF for professional development, but it doesn't mean it's the only organization you need to be engaged in. If you're a mechanical engineer and you want to go do hands-on technical projects, the American Society of Mechanical Engineering does a lot of cool things that you do. There's civil engineering society, there's chemical engineering society. So I would have students join multiple organizations. And the important thing to me was that they were getting engaged. They were building either a record of volunteer experience, or they were building their leadership skills. And that, when I started recruiting for my companies, was what I was focusing on. Your experience, that's great, but now I want to see how you're giving back to the community. I want to see how that has molded you, how that's impacted you. And now we're going to have a conversation about that. And I still talk to students. Now I've been out of school for 4 or 5 years, and I still talk to students about, well, how is SHPE going at your school? Or how is AICHE going? How is ISSE going? Like, I talk to them about that, and to connect to them on things that I've experienced before. After that, skills and certifications. And I'm going to go ahead and comment on this one by saying, if you are what I'm going to call a more technical major than my industrial engineering major, for example, computer science / computer engineering, I might move your skills and certifications to the top. The reason being is that when you're applying to jobs for computer science / computer engineering, a lot of it is, hey, do you know how to program? So I want to let them know from the beginning, hey, I know how to program. Here are the languages I program in. And if you're a freshman / sophomore and you just started, you don't have to be the best programmer. But I would say even go ahead and start learning on YouTube or on Khan Academy or on the internet how to program, and you can start showing the projects that you're doing on your own. You don't have to wait for your high school or your college or university to tell you, hey, now you're going to start learning C++ as a sophomore. You can go ahead and start doing that as a freshman. Really impressive, and it shows a lot of proactivity in your attitude and how you're managing your education. And then the last area that I note is usually the awards and honors. This is the one that, I hate to say this, but this is the one that usually gets chopped off first. The further you go in your professional career, you get stuck between, hey, I have a lot of stuff to put on here, and I really don't want to go to 2 pages because I don't want a page and a half or a page and a quarter. And awards and honors is great for talking points and showing that other people have invested in you and showing that you've been nominated for your good work and your good volunteer experience. So that's another one that you could absolutely start your resume with. And then my advice, and everything is all subjective, is as you get more experience and as your resume develops, that's kind of the first one that gets moved to the side. My opinion does not mean it's going to hold weight for everyone. Any comments on there, Esther, or are you good?
I would say that's absolutely true. And there is no right resume that's going to get you a scholarship. What gets you what a good resume is, what a great resume is a document that shows that you've put the time to think about to reflect on what you've accomplished thus far and give light to, like, somebody should see the path you've been on and kind of the direction that you're going after looking at your resume. And so I know that we had a junior member on here. You know, you may not have work experience when you're applying to your scholarship if you're graduating high school senior, or even if you're, you know, some of our freshmen and sophomore students, or like William mentioned, you know, you may not have engineering work experience or technical work experience. And so these categories serve as an opportunity for you to highlight what you have done, ways that, and it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody gave you an award. It could be a personal leadership accomplishment, some way that you've given back to your community. And so that's why I would say don't limit yourself to fitting a cookie cutter mold of what your resume is and the way that it's supposed to look, like William mentioned, and do what's aligned with what you have done, because regardless of where you are on that path, you have accomplished a lot. And so reflect on that.
Yep. And the only thing I'm gonna give an example of with, it doesn't have to be a job or a formal position, and this is gonna be more of the technical side. I worked with students in FIRST Robotics, and they put a lot of their FIRST Robotics experience on their resume. I think it's great. Unfortunately, when I was in high school, I did not do that. I was in soccer, and I ended up putting some of my soccer stuff on my resume. And again, it was one of those talking points that I was able to work with for scholarships and for jobs later on of, hey, in soccer, there's critical thinking. We have to think on the fly. There's a lot of teamwork, communication skills, a lot of stuff that we're using in everyday life for work. So last comment there. So, but don't expect it to just be, hey, I haven't worked as an engineer yet, so how can I have anything to put on my resume? I completely agree with you, Esther. This one's an important one. And this one, just from the top, before you begin writing. I am the kind of person that starts writing immediately, and you get 30 minutes down the page and you're like, what exactly am I putting together? This all looks so unorganized. And the older I got, the more I started to learn to put time into the prep. And there's a saying that now that I'm older, I appreciate it. Measure twice, cut once. Whenever I'm going to start my resume, what I always do now, especially if I need to start from scratch for some reason, and it's happened a couple times where I had to start my resume from scratch, actually go and get a sheet of paper, no computer, and I just start writing down accomplishments from the most recent to the oldest, and then I start looking at, okay, I have my bubble / my box here of all of the things I've done in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. What do I need this resume for? Is it for scholarship? Is it for a job? Okay, cool. And this is my approach. Somebody else might take a totally different approach. Let me collect those things that I want to put in there, and now I'm going to develop that resume. But the most important thing there is to write down all your different accomplishments, everything you've been involved in, so you can start to develop that onto a resume. And there's things that I won't include, and I am still on the mindset of just 1-page resume. So even now that I have 4 years of work experience, I don't want to put a 2-page resume together. I want to be able to send my message across nice and short. Any comments on that? Because I'm going to say one more thing before I let it go to the next slide. Esther.
No, go ahead. I'm
Oh,
listening to your last comment.
Oh, my last comment. The last bullet on here says spell check. Spell check for everything. I've always been really good at math and science. Awful at anything that had to do with language, grammar, English, Spanish. Doesn't matter what language is it in. So always do proofreading. I've had other people proofread my resume, and I've always constantly spell checking because I will mess up words left and right.
Yeah.
You good?
Yep.
I'm just making sure we're both on the same page.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
All right, perfect. Speaking of pages, now we're on the same page. So dissecting the resume. I don't know how well you can see this, but I do know we're going to be sending this out later. So once you do get it, you can zoom in on this. But on the resume, as I was talking about earlier, name on the top. This is very what I would consider traditional formatting for a resume. Your email, contact information, LinkedIn if you have it. And it looks like Mario Miller here has a GitHub, which might be able to show some of his technical projects that he's done. So that's really cool. Anyone who has any sort of projects and they've put it online or made a portfolio, great place to demonstrate your work. Something cool that I'm not seeing here that I've seen nowadays is the QR codes on the top right. And I put one on my resume that takes you to my LinkedIn. But Mario Miller here might have two, one for resume and one for his GitHub page. Education, like I had mentioned previously, he's got his university here, his major, GPA, when he's expected to graduate, relevant course of work. I'm gonna speak openly and honest about this one. I don't like the relevant coursework. The reason being is that if you're a computer science major, I think a lot of you are going to be taking the same courses. What I would rather have you focus your time in on for this space is for either leadership experience or for projects. But again, this is a personal opinion of mine because I see more value from showing what you're doing in the community, where you're giving back, or what you're physically doing with this knowledge from your courses. And then Mario is a computer science major, and he did put his skills near the top. Absolutely great. And as someone who looks for computer science majors, this is what I'm looking for. I just need to know what his skill set looks like. Then he went straight into his programming projects. It looks like Mario did not have any engineering internship / work experience yet, but he's got all these projects that if I am hiring for a computer science major or an engineering major, I can now look into what has Mario done, and we can talk about it. I can understand where his mind goes when he's trying to solve a problem, when he's trying to put answers together. And that'll help me understand if he's going to be a good fit for my team or the role that I'm looking to fit at the company. And when you are, I'm gonna hold on because I'm gonna let Esther comment on this resume from a scholarship standpoint. And then you see work experience. He doesn't have traditional engineer experience, but he does have work experience. This is good. Again, more talking points for me, understanding that Mario has worked before. And usually if you've worked, you have some sort of communication skills. You have some sort of ability to think and solve problems. So I like this resume. This is something I would want to talk to Mario more about. But I will say, I've seen much more, and this is not no negatives to Mario, much more creative resumes. I've seen some folks say, hey, I don't want to be like everyone else. I want my resume to stand out. And they make a brand new resume. And the only thing I'm going to say is that as long as it looks like you spent time to make it organized, it has flow and direction on where it's going, in my opinion, that's not a problem. You don't have to stick to the mold of the Mario Miller resume, as long as it looks professional. Esther, what do you have? I feel like you don't like what I just said, but it's okay.
I do like what I wish more of the world thought like you, William, but here we are. So I have a couple comments. One, this is an actual resume of somebody that applied to our scholarships. We changed some of the information to de-identify the person, but there are a few really strong points of this resume. One is somebody clearly put the time. Formatting a resume takes a lot of time. Like you should set aside a couple hours at least to do your first run through of structuring it and making sure that you have categories and that your headers stand out, right, in some way based on formatting. If you're applying to jobs, there are a lot of companies now that appreciate creativity and appreciate that individuals, because it doesn't take a lot of creativity to follow this mold, right, of your standard resume. That being said, for this purpose, our scholarship review committee has individuals who are very experienced, some that are younger professionals, and I'll say a couple things. Some of our review committee members may come from much more conservative companies or work experience or industries where they still stick to this like old templated resume structure. So I would say that you should definitely take up William's suggestion when you're applying to jobs, especially if you're applying to tech companies, for example, companies that are looking to disrupt the industries that they belong to. So any disrupting companies, more so than definitely do that for sure. But again, it comes down to being able to tell that somebody has spent the time to put it together. And this takes time. Like I can tell by looking at this resume that somebody reflected on each of these experiences. I agree with William in the relevant coursework. It's not, it would probably be one of the first items to go as your work experience develops, especially once you graduate, or if you already have completed your undergraduate degree, I would say it should definitely go. If you're applying as a graduate or PhD student, especially because you have so many other things to highlight. And there is a set curriculum, like William mentioned, for being able to put that you got your degree in industrial engineering or in computer science or in any of these other fields. So I wouldn't spend the real estate of your resume on that. Yeah. And I think this applicant did a really great job of putting together a very polished resume with having very little applicable work experience. And I think that's what we were trying to highlight here.
Absolutely.
So Efren has a question. How can we write about giving back in the community in the resume, listing volunteer work?
I can give you an example from when I was younger. So before I got involved in SHPE, and I'm going to answer it like this because there might be members who are just now getting involved or haven't had a formal leadership experience. When I was in high school, I actually was a coach for a U7/U8 soccer team, and I started by assistant coaching. One season, it went well. This next season, the head coach was like, "Hey, I'm getting really busy with work," but we had already been assigned a team, and he basically stepped down. I was no more than 15 years old, and I stepped up for being a head coach of a U8 team. The parents thought I was 20. I was not 20. But we actually went undefeated that season. And I was able to put that in my resume. And you're like, wait, why? How is that relevant? Well, have you ever tried to communicate with a bunch of 7 and 8-year-olds on how to play as a team, how to move across the soccer field, how do they need to communicate amongst each other, how to set plays? And those are the things that I was focusing on. I was focusing on, hey, I was able to show others how to do a skill. I was able to get them to understand my communication and communicate amongst themselves. I was able to get them to work as a team. And I'm not saying I was their manager, but I was managing the team. And that's how I would talk about that. It just depends on what your example. I've seen folks, and I'm going to go ahead and give another example. Food banks all over the country take volunteers every weekend to sort food, to package food, and to get food to their homes. I've done it at huge food banks like the food bank in Houston. I've done it at small food banks like a food bank in Ocala, which is a town in Florida that I'm from. Great place where, again, working with others, communicating to get a goal done. And I know in Houston, they actually count how much food you guys or the team packages at the end of the day, and they let you know to let you know, hey, here's your impact. And I'm just giving high level examples of how you could do that without having a formal president/treasurer/vice president position at a SHPE chapter. I do recommend folks to go into those leadership roles if you're able to, in the sense of, hey, I can balance school and life and the leadership role, because it will expose you and help you grow as not only a student, but as a professional and in so many areas. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Esther, and I don't know if that answers
Yeah,
the question.
I think that definitely answers different ways in which you can talk about translatable skills, transferable skills from leadership or volunteer experience. In the same way that there's a work experience section on this resume, you can include leadership experience. I always recommend using the word leadership in place of volunteer or with volunteer, because I think that just the fact that you are doing something that is not required of you without monetary compensation shows leadership and engagement with your community, and it's highly likely that you're engaging in some capacity as a leader in those opportunities. And so and I think that as Latinos, we don't always do a good job of highlighting our experiences and speaking to them. We're a very humble culture, and so I would include it as its own section. Also, if you are really passionate about something, like William's really involved with SHPE, it's become part of, I work at SHPE, right? But William is really heavily involved in the organization. I would say if it's an experience outside of work that's very critical to who you are as a person, I would definitely include it, even if it doesn't take up a big part of your resume, because it sheds light into who you are as a professional and what you care about. And so I would say that yes, we're trying to fit as much relevant information here into your education and your work experience, but also include those other components that are part of you as well. There's one other question. Should I include projects that I did in high school, even though I don't have much documentation from them? And that's Christopher. And I would say that depends on where you're at. So If you are a graduating high school senior, I would say yes, because the projects, extracurricular activities, and maybe some part-time work experience is really going to be the only experience that you have to highlight on your resume. And that's normal. That's what's supposed to, that's what we should expect of a high school student. I think anything past your freshman year of college, you should really not include anything high school related, other than maybe what high school you went to in your education. But even there, then I would say after sophomore year, you really don't need to include that anymore.
Yeah, I would agree. And the only thing I would comment on for, especially in sophomore year, I would say unless you were like a national champion of something, which is, really cool just in general, I hope you have now started doing that stuff in college. So you would be building this resume as you go. Anyways.
Oh, Christina asked a really good question. Should you include in a resume that you are first generation?
I never have. I am first generation. My parents are from Nicaragua. I don't know. I wouldn't do it. But what do you think, Esther? I don't.
I wouldn't include it in a resume because you can speak to that experience in your essays.
Absolutely.
Especially in the questions that talk about your trajectory to the point that you're at right now, and ask specifically about your life experience. That's where I would really mention it. I would mention it if it was tied to a certain volunteer or leadership experience that you have. So if you are active on a club on campus and you are supporting other, like if you're an upperclassman and you're mentoring underclassmen who are also first gen and it comes up in that way, then I would list it, but I wouldn't list it as an identifier necessarily.
I think I would use it during either an interview or when talking to, in a professional setting for a job, talking to a professional for the first time in a career fair. We might connect over that, and it would be something that would come up naturally somehow, and then we'd be able to. But I wouldn't put it on I don't even know why I would have put it on my resume. I just don't feel like it goes there. I would use it in an essay probably.
Yeah, I would say if it was yeah, if this was the only component that we were looking at, maybe, but since you have those other components, I wouldn't. But I'll be quiet now because we have like 6 more slides to get through and we have like 15 minutes. Okay.
All right, keeping the contact information clear. This example of here, Amara Miller, great example of, hey, here's my email, here's my phone number, here's my GitHub, and here's my LinkedIn, here's my name. Very important, very clear, good to go. Hope there's no questions on that one. So this be strategic. What I'm gonna say, and this is the where I was talking about, recruiters aren't looking at your, or recruiters traditionally aren't looking at your resume for very long. You have 6 seconds to impress your reader. What I'm gonna go ahead and say about be strategic and just this is when you're applying to a job in scholarship, university, anything, and they tell you, hey, this is what we're looking for, you should really read those requirements and not just make one resume for everything. Go ahead and read what SHPE is looking for in their scholarship. Go ahead and read, and I know you used Intel earlier, Esther. Go ahead and read what Intel is looking for in their job posting. And there might be either skills that you either can be working on over the next 3 months, you already have, or the next year that you can start putting into your resume. And that's what I would look at for be strategic of like, hey, make sure you're going to hit the nail on the head with everything that they're looking for, so you're a good fit. And you'll see on most job postings now, at least for me on the professional side, it feels like there's a page and a half of information from the employer on what they're looking for. And I might not be ready for that job today, but now I know, hey, let me spend some time to gain those experiences, to put it on my resume and make myself a better candidate. And I would say that for university, scholarships, and full-time roles. Anything else you want to put in here, Esther?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Awesome. Using the right words. So this to me is important. And the reason I'm going to say this is important is that the resume needs to flow, I'm going to say effectively and clean. And so I wouldn't put any big words that I don't use. And I mentioned earlier, I'm not good at language. So a lot of my resume is very basic English, and I don't go for fancy words. But what I do use is a lot of action words to describe what I've done throughout my experiences. And you can look up on Bing or on Google action words for resumes. You can literally type in top 100 action/verb words for resumes, and you get a whole list of words that'll be good to talk about. Hey, I was working on this team, so I was managing the team, I was coordinating, I was delivering an objective, and those delivering, coordinating, managing are very good words to describe what you were doing on this team. And I'm just gonna leave that at that example. Anything else you would add to that? Because
I did everyone a favor, and I threw my favorite list is actually one that EL posts in the chat. And I would echo what William said. Don't use words that you don't know or that you haven't heard. It's okay if you don't use them on a regular basis to talk about what you do, like in casual conversation, but you should know what they mean, and you should understand the way it's written in your resume. But I do know that sometimes when we're writing a resume, you think of like the same 3 verbs for every line that you're typing. And so to kind of break that writing block, if you will, a list like this helps.
absolutely. And then the other thing I'm going to echo from earlier, spell check, peer reviews, very important for this. Use the right words. Other folks might be able to catch things that you didn't catch when you were writing. It happens to me all the time. Okay. Sorry, I got to move our faces. I can't see myself on my screen. Okay. Framing your non-related work experience. So to me, and I know we've been kind of hammering on this one, so I'm going to just hit on it lightly because I know we're limited on time. This to me again says, hey, William Gonzalez was working as a construction, landscaping, and painter. What does that have to do with engineering? And the first company that gave me an internship was an aerospace company, called Northrop Grumman. And that was what was on my resume, but I was able to translate communication skills, teamwork skills, critical thinking skills, management skills from those jobs, and they liked to see that. And here you'll see an example of what the task was. So let's say you work at a Publix, Walmart, Kroger, you name it, across the country, kept inventory of new products. So you're responsible for stocking the shelves. Organized and pays attention to detail. That is absolutely true. And if you're good at your job, you are doing this day to day. And when it comes to now, let's say keeping track of reports and keeping track of entries or details of a project, you're going to be able to move that skill over to now an engineering internship, a full-time role, a research opportunity, and somebody on the scholarship committee will be able to identify, okay, this person, and similar to what Esther said earlier, is on a trajectory to do great things, and we want to support them by providing them the scholarship to help with that burden of the education cost. Any other comments on there, Esther? I know we got limited time, so I'm trying to move and groove. Awesome. Again, if you have any questions, shoot them in the chat and we'll try to get to them today. Listing your degree information. So this, again, educational piece of your resume, name, objective, summary, and then you hit that education. So here it says, if you're still not in college and don't have a lot of work experience, include your degree information first. I agree with that. And once you graduate, I would actually move your education towards the bottom. Your work experience becomes a lot more important to employers. But as a student, whether you be high school or college, I want to see your education towards the top. I want to see your GPA, and I want to see your entire degree of what you're getting. I don't necessarily agree on this last point of GPA over 3.2. And the reason that comes up, and if it's your first time reading this, a lot of companies have a GPA minimum. So if you have, and it's usually around 3, some companies 3.1, some 2.7, 3.2, it just depends. I want to see your GPA on there. And if your GPA is a low GPA, but you might be that person who's got a story behind them of, hey, I come from a single parent home, I got to work, and I'm doing school, and I take my brothers and sisters to school. Like there's a whole story that explains why your GPA is lower. You have less time to study than a lot of your peers. So to me, I would use it as one of your strengths because you probably have a lot of other skills that other folks do not have with the higher GPAs. That's just my opinion. Esther, I don't know if you want to comment on that. And again, William's opinion,
Yeah,
not Chip's opinion.
we're actually as an organization trying to do away with how we consider GPAs in the scholarship process altogether. And the reason is, like, if you're in good standing, good academic standing, that means you're on track for your degree. And a lot of students that are in between that good standing point and this 3.2 are the students that are working multiple jobs and have other life responsibilities as to why, like, no one is on purpose not doing well in school, right? So I mean, there are activities that kind of prevent you from doing well in school, but there's also, I would say, there are a lot of students that are in this space, and it's not because, or in this range, and it's not because of lack of attention to school or desire to do well. And so I would say that pretty soon here, probably by the next scholarship cycle, the way that you report your GPA and how your academics are taken into consideration will be drastically different for our scholarship process.
The
So
only
I would
comment
say, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, the only comment I'll add on to that, even though SHPE and scholarships might move in that direction, companies might still have this 3.0/2.75 GPA requirement. So what I would tell you, if you were sitting in front of me and you're like, hey, what do I do? Well, I need you to focus on your projects. I need you to focus on your leadership skills. I need you to focus on your volunteering, because we are gonna wow and dazzle them with all your other skills on how good you are. And we're not gonna focus. They're gonna be so impressed on everything else that they're just gonna forget that you have under a 3.0 or 3.2 GPA. And that is a real thing that happens all the time, every year.
Awesome.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and keep moving. Distant skills and awards. Depending on, this is where I'm gonna say it's important to read the job posting, it's important to read the scholarship that you're applying for, it's important to read the university. They might be looking for different things. So depending on what you're looking for, you might want to list different skills you have. And you might want to focus on different skills. I'm going to give a simple example. Hey, I want to work at Intel as a programmer. Well, I should focus in on my projects that focus around programming and my skills that focus around programming. Hey, I want to work at a construction company and my projects are all around chip manufacturing. Well, how can I focus those same projects towards more of a construction/manufacturing mindset? And there's probably a way. You just need to figure out how to list that for that job. I think the only thing here that I agree with this, of avoid using awards you receive prior to your college career unless you're graduating from high school. And my rule of thumb is usually, hey, once you've hit your completion of your freshman year, you should be trying to take everything from high school off, because you've been engaged at the university level in an organization of some sort or volunteering. And now you can move that information away from your resume and you have new stuff to put on there. Even if you're a sophomore or a junior and you still have things from high school, the goal is to remove those because I want more relevant experience. Not that those things are bad, it's just that, hey, it's been 2 or 3 years. What have you been doing in that time other than school? Anything else you want to comment on there?
Nope.
Awesome. Evaluating your resume. Spell check, peer to peer review. And it's funny that here it says one small error can take away your credibility from your resume. I would agree with that, especially after seeing how recruiters look at resumes. Esther had earlier said you can spend 2 hours on the format. You can absolutely spend more than 2 hours on the format, and you could spend like 4 hours on your grammar. And when I was in college, and even to this day, I've had students show me the resume and we've reviewed it 10, 15, 20, 25 times. And every time it just gets a little bit better. So practice makes perfect is a real deal here when it comes to evaluating resumes. I usually recommend, and here it says University Career Services. My first stop for everyone is, hey, your local SHPE chapter. And if you don't have a local SHPE chapter at university, college, or high school, find out who is the regional vice president for your region for SHPE and tell them, hey, I am a SHPE member. I want help I don't have the resources, and I bet you, I will put $1 on it, that they will find you the resources, whether it be a professional like me, whether it be another chapter around the area, and they'll either come and meet you in person, or they will figure something out virtually. One way or another, SHPE is here to help, so please feel free to reach out. SHPE chapters, then I would say, yep, university relations or career services does have options at every university that I've ever been to. If anything, I would also reach out to some of your professors. They've probably either been in industry or have an idea of where you can get help. Guidance counselors is another place that a lot of people don't go stop at for resume help. But if you don't have any of the other three, maybe the guidance counselor is the person who's going to at least start helping you on this resume or point you in the right direction. And then these last two bullets here, does it reflect who you are? Does it reflect, if you've spent the right amount of time on this resume, and that's a lot of time, it's usually like 10+ hours, you probably know every word on this resume inside and out. So when someone's looking at your resume and they say, hey, what did you mean when you said this? You'll know exactly what they're talking about, and you'll be able to start having a conversation on it. That's the kind of level of intimacy you build with your resume, in my opinion. Esther, anything you want to comment on here?
I would say the most uncomfortable thing is to ask someone to review your resume outside of where you're submitting it. I think true imposter syndrome kicks in, at least for me. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but it's like you don't want your colleagues, your professors, your like anybody to see your mistakes, especially when like your resume is something you just spent hours doing to make look perfect. And so you think it's perfect, and so having to hear that it's not is not the like easiest thing to do. But believe me, a resume goes from mediocre to outstanding with external views, and that's the only way that it happens. Like no matter how much of a resume connoisseur you may be, it takes somebody else, an outside perspective, to really make it great.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I would say that at this point, and I think it's because I've been around SHPE for so long, that I feel like I'm like, hey, I embrace all the failures and I'm going to learn from them. So I want somebody to be able to say, hey, I recommend this, or I think this. And I'm like, oh, I never even thought about that. When I get that feeling, it's really exciting. And it's like, okay, this is good information. Let me see how I can build that into my resume, or see if I find that of value. So I'm with you. So last slide, we made it, and 2 minutes to spare. Does anyone have questions, comments, concerns, jokes? We're open to all. It's an open mic. I don't know if they can come on the mic, but
open mic. All right. Well, if there's no questions, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I'm going to send a round of applause virtually to William. Thank you for joining us and for walking us through that. Having been somebody that's gone through the process yourself, we really appreciate you joining us. Oh, look, you have different hand claps.
I like Efron's hand.
But we look forward to seeing all of your applications this year. So please reach out if you have any questions. Take advantage of the fact that we're making ourselves available to you all. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.